For youngsters these days, there's all sorts of distractions and influences that can misguide us. Crime, violence, and drug abuse all seem to be linked to gangs and street culture. So how do we tackle this root cause? Join me for real stories, real issues, and real views. This is Real Talk. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. Throughout the series, we've been looking at social issues that affect young people in today's society. And in today's show, we're going to carry on with that flow, looking at street culture. Why do young people feel the need to actually join gangs? What are the dangers that come about with that? And how do we tackle issues such as gang violence and drug abuse? But first things first, we've got a special panel here in the studio that I'm going to introduce for you today. Now, first of all, I'd like to introduce Roger Green. Welcome to the show. He's a director at the Centre for Community Research at the University of Hertfordshire. Next, I'm joined by Jason Young. Hello, welcome to the show. Who works at the Merton Youth Services and is a social service worker himself. And finally, we have Sergeant Ian Harmon, who works in the Merton Park area here in southwest London. Welcome to the show, all of you. Roger, I'd like to start with you first of all. We're talking about gangs today. First of all, can you help define what a gang actually is?
That's difficult because there's various definitions. One, the Home Office, the Met Police use one, the Centre for Social Justice run by the ex-leader of the Conservative Party, Ian Duncan Smith, have another one. I mean, basically, you could amalgamate all three and others by saying that a youth gang is primarily a group of young people who are involved in criminal activities and violence. They have a discernible image, they are into a territory, and they commit acts of, say, violence and extreme criminality, which takes them beyond a youth gang. There's also issues about fashion and clothes and their whole image. And some youth gangs have a structure in terms of the older members and the younger members.
Okay, all right, we'll get onto that later on in the show. Jason, would you agree with that? Because if you read the papers nowadays, anyone who's wearing a hood is termed as a gang member. Any group of kids are just hanging around, they're termed as gangs. Is that actually accurate?
No, it's not. But like the gentleman here was saying, is that it's kind of hard to define what a gang really is. But as you were saying, basically it's young people that, or a group of people that are involved in antisocial behaviour, violence or crime, a group of people together, then they would see that as a gang.
Ian, when does a gang actually form about? Because when you have groups of youth, you find that actually from that, then they go out to, they go on to bigger things like organised crime, like we touched upon. Where does that actual change come about, where people could, you know, for innocent reasons, hang about? Everyone has a group of friends, their own circle of friends that they have. Where do you go from that to going to actual something that could be classified as a gang?
Roger alluded to it some moments ago, in that you can have a group of young people who hang around together simply as mates, simply as friends, because that's their peer group. It may be that within that group of, let's say, 10 or 12, there's a nucleus of 3, 4 or 5 who want to go out and commit criminal offences of whatever nature, be they robbery, be they theft. Within that unit of the larger group, there will be a smaller subset, if you like, who are the criminal element.
Okay, if you look at current statistics at the moment, I mean, there seems to be a huge rise in gang activity, the drug abuse, the crime that comes with it. Ian, why do you think that we're actually getting a rise in gang-related incidents at the moment?
I think it's hard to quantify what is a gang-related incident. If you look at serious crime figures, and yes, I'm sure there are statistics to back up what you're saying. Okay. There are different types of gang activities. Obviously at the extreme end you have gun-related violence, murders in the worst case, through to smaller, younger groups who perhaps go out and commit what some people even call antisocial behaviour. I call it criminal damage, graffiti and such like. And sometimes that's a feeder for those larger groups to become attached to criminality and associate with criminality, and then move on and, in the group's terms, develop towards much more serious offences.
Okay, I mean, working as a police officer yourself, do you actually find that the number of gang-related incidents are increasing? Are you receiving more reports? Or actually, because what happens is the more incidents that happen, people actually don't want to tell the police about what's been happening. If it's related to gangs, people actually prefer to keep things quiet and not report it. Would you agree with that?
There can be a confusion, I think, simply because there's a group of young people together sitting on a wall outside a block of flats.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're committing a criminal offence. What tends to happen is that, let's say there's a block of flats, there's a group outside on the wall, and a resident will ring up saying to the police control room, well, there's a group of lads, I think they're smoking drugs.
Yeah.
And that happens on a regular basis. Now, clearly, we as the police have a responsibility to deal with that perceived or actual crime, okay? So the officer will turn up, they'll speak to the group. It may be that they're just chilling, they're not smoking, they're not drinking, they're not committing any offences. They're behaving to that cooler an antisocial way.
Yeah.
There's no criminality whatsoever, but that resident still believes that behaviour is antisocial. So as far as that person is concerned, that's a criminal activity to that individual.
Okay. Jason, I just want to turn to you. I mean, like Ian's just mentioned there, if you've got a group of people who are sitting around, just, maybe having innocent fun as well, they get stereotyped as gangs, and maybe the police might even get called down and ask them what you're doing. Do you think that sort of actually encourages them to join gangs, and because they feel that they're being stereotyped, so that sort of alienates them? And would you feel that that's actually what happens?
I don't think that's what encourages them to join gangs, but I definitely believe that infuels the hype for the media and everybody else around, that they believe that they see a group of young people and they might just be hanging about and they label them straight away that they're a gang, which obviously will cause problems, whereas outside general public and other people might see them and perceive them as a gang, which obviously just infuels the whole situation and the hype around gangs with young people. So
what's the actual work that you do as a social worker? What's your interaction with gangs?
Basically, my interaction with gangs is just I get referred young people for a variety of different reasons.
Okay.
And some of them, we've identified them to be gang members, some of them are victims of gang activities.
Right.
And my work as a key worker is to be the key role in that young person's life, help that young person either get back into education or into employment, and just basically acts as a mediator with that young person, but also mentor the young person as well.
So from your own experience, what are the reasons that people join a gang?
There's a variety of reasons. There's no one reason that people join gangs. It could be poverty, lack of parenting skills, peer pressure.
There's a whole range of issues.
Yeah, there's a whole range.
Roger, would you agree with that? I mean, the research you've done is not just looking at the London area. You've looked at communities and how they work all over the world. So would you agree with that? Why do people actually join gangs?
If you look at urban gangs, they primarily come out of socially economically deprived areas. You don't get youth gangs in country, rural areas. It's an urban phenomena. It's, as Jason's saying here, it's issues around poverty and issues around social exclusion, those typical social factors. But as Jason touched on there's issues about families, about parenting. It's about school and education. Huge numbers of gang members have been excluded from school officially, or they self-exclude themselves. The thing about peer group pressure, lots of evidence of peer group pressure, which also includes threats to join. Threats to the young person themselves and or their siblings and or their family. Yeah. Lots of factors. Also where you actually live, as I hinted at earlier on. Okay. That's a big issue in terms of whether you live in a fairly affluent area or a non-affluent area. So lots of competing factors. There's no one reason. People also argue there's sort of race issues. Not true. There's a whole number of issues around.
Okay, all right. Well, we've got a studio audience here as well. I want to bring them into the discussion right now. You guys are living up here in the London area. Have you actually noticed an increase maybe in gang-related problems, or maybe gangs don't even actually affect you on a day-to-day basis? What do you think? What's your views?
I think I agree with what Roger says. There is a sense of belonging to a group, and people want to be involved in something, and a lot of times maybe they haven't got anything that they're involved in, or they haven't got anything to belong to, and they feel that they need something, and they get caught up with the wrong people or the wrong sort of groups, and that's how it sort of snowballs off.
Yeah, okay, let's get one more view. So have you got a point if you'd like to just take the mic.
From my point of view, I think it's more about respect as well.
Right.
If, for example, in school, like boy get bullied, he will feel lonely.
Yeah.
So he might as well find a gang as a social life, and like proper social life.
Yep. Okay, that's a fantastic point. What does the panel think about that? People joining gangs because they want support, social support. They want some friends and they want respect as well. There's a key issues. What do you feel about that?
There's lots of issues around parenting, and in some communities there's issues about a lack of a male role model. That's particularly hinted at in terms of the Afro-Caribbean, African communities, in terms of the lack of two-parent families and particularly a stable
But what
male
about even at
role.
school? I mean, you
School-
touched on about in the school environment
School-
with your friends around you, you join a gang because you want them to support you. For example, if you get into a fight, if you have disagreements with someone, you want your friends to come and back you up.
Yes, but it doesn't mean to say you actually join a street gang. I mean, youth groups and gangs have existed throughout the centuries. They're not new, they're different. I think school has got a major role, which it has anyway, teachers have a major role in preventing young people joining gangs. I mean, the membership of gangs is getting younger and younger. So it's before they hit secondary school. And that's issues around, as the person said there, it's about isolation, it's about being by themselves. It's joining almost a surrogate family for some young people, not all young people. For other young people, it's a lot of excitement, it's creative, and it brings in a lot of money for some of them.
Okay. Ian, I mean, when you're dealing with gangs, you obviously stop them and you get to question them as well. Once you've questioned them, what do you actually find is the reason that they actually start joining these gangs? What's your experience on that?
It depends on the group. I mean, Roger hinted at street gangs. I think it's important to differentiate between street gangs who commit serious acts of criminality and groups of lads hanging around together, or indeed groups of people hanging around together. If you're talking about the larger groups, if you will, the non-criminal groups, for some of them, yes, it is an extended family. And indeed for some of the street gangs, it's an extended family where there isn't positive role models at home, be they male or female.
Right, right.
So I think it depends on which of those two gangs you want me to look at. I think with the larger gangs, you're going to get a nucleus of members and then friends in a positive way. And with street gangs, you're going to get 2 or 3 key members and then hangers on. And there's a difference, I think, there.
So do you think those key members actually influence other people to join in?
Yeah, I'm sure they do, yeah.
There's also, I was going to say, there's a fear element as well with a lot of individual gang members. Why they join gangs as well. A lot of it is around fear, like you said, and also respect. And some people, especially young people, standing alone and standing up for what they believe against the majority is they find it very hard.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to join a group of people and blend in with whatever it is that they're about.
Yeah, that's true, but also it's survival of the fittest, isn't it? When it comes down to street culture as well. I mean, whoever's got the most force is going to steer the other people in that direction as well. They're going to get influenced. Jason, we've talked about the role of education as well. We touched on about kids who are growing up in school, and some people say it's the role of the parents to educate them. Some people say it's the role of the teachers. What's your views on about education in terms of schooling?
Just like Ian was saying, that a lot of gang members, when young people have been excluded from school and out of education, and I find that the channels in which to get those young people back into education once they've been excluded is so long-winded that these young people are going to be hanging around, and if they're hanging around and they're meeting up with other young people who are not attending school and hanging about, and you know, there's a saying they say that, you know, the devil finds work for idle hands.
Okay, but then you have to look at the reason why these people are being excluded. If they're being excluded because they're actually showing antisocial behaviour in school, they're disrupting lessons, then obviously the school has no other alternative but to exclude them.
But there's when they get excluded, where do they go from when they're excluded, and what is in place to engage these young people, and is there the right people working with these young people in terms of educating them?
Okay, let's move to the audience. You've been listening to what they're thinking here. Would you agree? How have you found it at school? Are there people who are disruptive and get excluded from school, and do you think that actually leads them on to other things outside of school? How does that affect the people? We've got let's get some views here.